company for 3.5 years. And projects that I've worked on, so I haven't really worked on any projects. I am the paper making bounty manager. So I have one of the paper machines is what I manage, and the technicians that work on the line.
Nice.
I love Bounty paper towels. They're my favorite brand.
Continue to use those.
Everything charming.
Yeah, we'll have Ivan go next.
Okay, yeah, no, my name is Ivan Jimenez. I work for Dow Chemical out in Seadrift, Texas. It's like pretty far south Texas. And I've been working with the company for about 1.5 years, but I'm actually relatively new to the role. I started being a run plant or production engineer about 4 months ago. And project work, like I haven't done anything too big, but because I've been training, so I need to get certified on my units. So that's like doing a whole technical review board or whatever. But one of my units just had but one of the biggest things that's happened so far is that one of my units had a turnaround where it's like completely shut down for maintenance. And I got to learn a lot of different tasks that happen in a turnaround. Like you see huge cranes out there, and then add-ons that need to be put on, like things that need to be put on the fly, like removing valves or changing valves or pump maintenance or all that kind of stuff. And I got to get my hands in that a little bit and, do the paperwork and also see the work being done out in the field. So that's like kind of the stuff that I'll be doing also, like moving on as well once I get certified more in my units.
Thanks. We'll have Hannah and then Kendall go for the introductions.
I'm Hannah. So I graduated in spring of 2019. So now I'm working for Kaiser Aluminum. So we are a company who extrudes aluminum for automotive purposes. We have plants all over the US. So I work with all of those plants actually. I'm based at the one in Richmond, and we extrude mostly drive shafts. So that's what I'm focused on, but I also get to travel to the other plants. So like one of the projects that I've been working on recently was implementing dye process control out at one of the plants in LA. So it was kind of taking a process that we have at another plant and making that work for the plants out there. So that's what I'm working on now. I've only been here since, well, it's gone by fast since it's 2020, but I've been here since January. But it's all kind of running together. That's what I do.
Thank you.
Guess I'll go. So Kendall Moore, graduated 2016 in mechanical engineering. So I currently work at Sabra Dipping Company. So of course we're the hummus company that you see in the store with the red lid, pretty familiar. Actually all of the hummus that you see in the stores across the country of Sabra comes out of Colonial Heights, Virginia, near Petersburg. Most people don't know that, but yeah, so I am currently a mechanical engineering, I guess you would call it a packing engineer / project manager. So I actually manage capital projects from start to finish, from design and definition to bid and award to different vendors, as well as the installation phase, design reviews, and construction, which is kind of where we're at now. And essentially, I manage any type of filling and packaging equipment. So the equipment that puts the hummus into the cup, puts a label on it, seals it, puts the lid on it. I manage and purchase that type of equipment and install it. Some key projects that I'm doing right now, actually, I just had 2 really big installs today that happened at the same time. Coincidentally, they didn't plan to happen at the same time because this is like so stressful. Ivan, you mentioned like the cranes and everything. So I installed an HVAC unit on the roof today to service a space we can have like 55-degree cooling. So we installed that today with a huge 275-foot crane. And then we also put in a piece of filling equipment that I purchased from Germany 8 months ago that amidst COVID and everything in 2020 finally arrived in America. We got it on site, got it through the filler hall and set it in place. So those were 2 really big milestones in my project. So super stoked about that. So if you guys want free hummus, let me know.
Definitely.
Good to know. Very cool.
Yeah.
Thanks. We'll have Charlie go next.
Okay, can you guys hear me okay?
Mhm.
So I'm Charlie Kessinger. I work at DuPont Asian Films, which is here in Hopewell, Virginia. I think we are the only plant in America. We've got a number of plants in Europe, and then we've actually got a couple plants in China. So DuPont, I think, is more of a familiar name, but Teijin is actually a Japanese company. And some 10 years ago or so, they kind of had like a joint venture. And Teijin is actually one of the biggest chemical companies in Japan. And so we produce plastic film, polyethylene film. It goes into a lot of medical products, labeling, some food packaging, things like solar panels, a lot of different, what we call specialty, it's specialty plastic film. A lot of it has coating on one side or the other of the film. And there's different properties with the actual polyethylene. Some of it is more low melt temperature, can kind of, we call that heat seal. A lot of some of the food packaging you open where you have to like peel open the lid, the edge is kind of like heat sealed to the container. It's like one function that we focus on. So I've been working here for about 5 years. 3 of those years I was in the coating department as a coating engineer. And then in the last year or so, I've moved on and now I'm managing one of the 6 film lines on site. So I'm technically called an asset leader, but I'm really just a production engineer. I kind of manage and oversee one of the film lines. So I'm responsible for the day-to-day production, make sure we're making good material, downtime, uptime. And then what I've been doing a lot recently is managing like trials, new product development on the line. So we've got our normal set of products that we make for customers, and then maybe every month or two, we've got to insert into our production plan a period of time to produce some trial material. So it's just a lot of coordinating with a lot of different people on site. So yeah, that's the general overview.
Very nice. Hey, everybody, I just wanted to clarify for you that we are recording this and that the recording is going to be used in our professional development class and posted online for our students. We have a lot of competing events this week, so we're just going to move forward and use the record as a way to get it out to students. We really appreciate you being here. And that was some great introductions. So Sean, you want to go ahead and start with the questions?
Absolutely. And I just want to mention, George, you're more than welcome to you're more than welcome to ask any questions throughout any point in time. So let's start with the first question. And if you guys to please describe your work or your function, which we kind of went over, but what's it like a week in your role? What's your week been like, and what are some of the projects that you've worked on recently? And I know, Charlie and Kendall mentioned this a little bit earlier, but Shannon and Hannah, if you could pitch in a little bit and talk about some of the projects you've worked on this week.
Yeah, so in my role, like I say, so I'm on a certain paper machine, and on the paper making side, we're responsible for gathering raw materials, and we make a pulp substance, and we pretty much dry the paper, and we make really big parent rolls. So that's what my job is. I manage a paper machine, and just to make sure that we produce as many tons as we can, and then we're reaching our metrics. So a day in the life for me, we start about 6 a.m., 6:30 in the morning is our first morning meeting. And then you pretty much, it's kind of, you have your daily cycle of meetings and kind of go through your metrics of how you did the day before. But the biggest thing that I say as projects is if you have any unplanned breakdowns. So this week, thankfully, we didn't have any unplanned breakdowns. So everything's been kind of going as planned. Typically, with the technicians that work on my line, on my paper machine, we do things from like equipment owner coaching every single day, making sure they understand how to do daily cleaning tasks on the machine to keep the hygiene good, to make sure that the paper is going to continue to run as we say it's going to be. So that's pretty much like a day in the life that we have where I work at. So.
Thank you. Yeah, Hannah, if you could tell us a little bit more about some of the projects that you've worked on.
Hey, yeah. So the team I'm with is called the Advanced Engineering Team. And I think, like I said, we are in charge of all of the plants across the US. So our main goal is to standardize the aluminum extrusion process between plants. So all the plants make different aluminum products, but it's all extrusion. So we try to standardize the process for each part made at those plants using the same system. So I actually I'm a process engineer. I don't know if I mentioned that, but I work a lot with the software development team as well. So I am looking at a lot of data throughout the day and making sure that the machines are running consistently through all the plants. I look at a lot of reports, make sure the machines are collecting the correct data and reporting that back. So also a main project I'm working on right now is we are changing to a new ERP system, which is what sales and planning system. So I'm taking all of the old data and putting that into the new. So it's been the past couple months. So recently it hasn't been as exciting, I will say, but it's still very interesting because in my position, you get to work a lot with the machines out on the floor, as well as the data that we're bringing in. So I work a lot with the people on the floor and get their input on how they feel things are working and how they feel the machines are working.
Thank you. Yeah, you don't have to call on you, Ivan. I remember you from PChem, so I have to ask some of the projects that you're working on now that you're at Dow as a chemical engineer.
Yeah, so I'm in charge of a unit that's a mixed glycol ethers unit, and it's two of them. So there's a continuous process and a batch still. And basically what we do is get these raw materials and make specialty chemicals. So like, there's difference between commodity and specialty. So we make more specialty chemicals. And like Shannon was mentioning, and Kendall, pretty much like day-to-day operations, you're trying to keep up with operators and operations indoor and outdoor to see what's going on with the units, making sure everything's running okay. And to answer your question, just the past couple of weeks, like a few of the things I've been working on is like removing a vent valve valve in the following piping from like a catalyst double valve and buffer system or double valve and vent. Because I don't know if you've heard of like LOPA, layers of protection analysis, but there's a LOPA scenario that had to be mitigated. And there was a chance of caustic going into one of the waste streams, which is not desirable if there's a backflow. So what I had to do was get in touch with operators and get in touch with people from tech centers that are like SMEs in this area and get their input to see what would be like one of the best options. And at the end of the day, we have that discussion and make the decision to remove the valve and how we're gonna do to clean up everything and replace what's there. And that's like one of the salt model projects I was working on. And once that whole valve is changed out and the following piping is demoed, then we will have a drain valve to drain out any caustic that could be stuck between the two double valves. So that's like one of the examples. That's like an example of one of the things I was working on like the past week, and we're working on trying to finalize it and get maintenance to go out there and actually remove and do the physical work.
Thanks. And Kendall and then Charlie. But Kendall, tell me a little bit more about what you've worked on this past week at Sabra.
Yeah, so this past weekend was pretty turbulent at Sabra. Like I said, even though I'm a packaging engineer by trade, I'm technically a project manager. So not only does that involve the technical competency of projects, but also cost and schedule and management of in-house resources and external resources, right? So this week, my main two goals were to install an HVAC system, one, and two, install the utility. And when I say utility, of course, power and compressed air required to relocate one production line and also move into place a new piece of production equipment, which is the German one I was speaking of. So my week really started off, and really last week and this week was coordinating with my external vendors. We utilize some local vendors for compressed air and electrical supply, and planning and scheduling that within the plant. But as a lot of you guys know, working in manufacturing, like the goal of operations is to push production, right? To minimize downtime and optimize uptime. So any type of engineering plant work, utility work, depending on like the safety, quality, or production impact, you may experience downtime. So what we have to do is work closely with our operations counterparts to coordinate the time frames as to when I can send my guys in to do their installs, do it in a safe way, a food safe compliant way, and also just like technically sound, all while not impacting operations too much, right? So last week and beginning of this week was mainly like what we call alignment meetings. So I'll sit in the office with, you know, operations leadership, quality leadership, the business unit leaders, you know, people are just like in everyone else's roles here, the production engineers, maintenance technicians, facilities engineers. And we say, hey guys, like, what's the scope of the work? How long will it take? What's the impact to ops? And then we all come to an alignment on what that looks like. And then this week, I focused on actually overseeing those jobs. So I also acted as a construction manager because for some capital projects, you're not always heavy on the budget side. You're usually constrained by budget for whatever reason, but we're still working on that. But what that means is that some resources you have to then do in-house. And although Sabra is a pretty like large company in terms of like our product outreach, we're still small compared to companies like DuPont, Dow, P&G. I mean, these are companies that have been around for decades, and Sabra is but 15 years old, right? So times like this week where I'm like, okay, I got 3 vendors, I got operations team, the maintenance team that I all need to work with. Like I end up being the project manager, but also like the construction manager, right? So then kind of as the week progressed, you know, it was really, okay, we had a crane day that we will be picking the crane off the, picking with the crane, the unit off the roof, putting it down, and then putting a new one up there. And we had to coordinate with the vendors, weather, all these different factors that impacts like us being able to do that. And then also coordinating the time with the operations team, because like I said, we're trying to do work, as you guys know, that doesn't impact operations as much. So coordinating with the operations team, safety, quality, to make sure we can get the equipment in safely and sound and install it. So that is this week from a day in the life or a week in the life of me at Sabra was probably, it's more active because it's more on like the install construction side of the engineering work process, as I mentioned to you guys. However, when we're not doing that, a lot of my day in the life as a capital engineer is design reviews for technical equipment with like my vendors domestically and internationally. We're doing budget and scope and schedule meetings to make sure the department is holistically on track with our projects and how my projects feed into that. And then also, I'm doing a lot of on the floor work, working with like continuous improvement engineers, right? So I know some of you guys on the call, you're responsible for like, you know, hitting your KPI metrics and making sure you have like optimized uptime and availability and stuff. Well, part of my job is supporting the operations and the production engineers to ensure they have the tools and resources necessary to hit their business metrics. So yeah, I would say that's what my like day in life looks like. And yeah, it's just, it's very fluid at times, but we try to keep it as structured as possible with that process. But, you know, we have some good milestones at times, and sometimes we got to be reactive to different happenings. So.
Yeah, thank you for that.
Yeah.
Very insightful. And Charlie, if you could tell us a little bit more about the projects you've worked on this past week, particularly.
Yeah. So kind of similarly, this has been a more unusual.
All right, looks like he's muted.
Looks like we lost Charlie. Maybe he has a bad connection.
Well, we'll circle back to Charlie, or if he pops back up, we can have him continue. But, you know, all of you mentioned the projects that you've worked on, and for some of you, it's been a heavy week, and some of you, It's been a relatively light week. The question would be, oh, Charlie, you're back. Disappearing act. The question has been, what are the expectations for what is the work-life balance that you're experiencing, at your respective companies? Are you working, shift schedules, or have you guys had the opportunity to transition from, a shift schedule to working something more relative to like a 9 to 5? Tell us a little bit more about that. We'd love to hear more about that. And we'll change up the order a little bit here and start with Hannah this time.
Hey, yeah. So I usually work 9 to 5, 8 to 5, but I am expected though to be available because our plants run 24 hours and also everywhere. So sometimes I'll get a text at 9 p.m. asking why a machine's not working and ask me to fix it. So always have to be there. And also just being very responsive and available. So the individual plants rely on the data that we're giving them through our reports. And sometimes databases aren't always the most reliable, so they can sometimes crash, break down. So I'm expected to, reply in a reasonable time, have everything fixed. But for the most part, when I'm working on a normal project, it'll just be throughout the day, except for those random phone calls, sometimes the weekends too, which is always fun. But also in my role, I do get to travel, which I know a lot of people getting out of college are looking for. So it's possible in the manufacturing field to find a job where that allows you to do that. But the culture, working in more than one place, you really do see the culture changing from one to another. Some plants adopt the new processes way more easily than other plants, but it's a fun learning process, and you get to see how other people work and interacting with everyone throughout the company. So.
Yeah, thank you. And then we'll switch it up. Shannon, tell us a little bit about P&G.
Try to stay as positive and not sound too crazy. So typically, like I said, I get to work around 6 a.m. and I will leave around 4:30 on a good day. So you work about 10 and a half hours Monday through Friday. Right now, so I have a process engineer that reports to me along with a machine leader outside the technicians, these other managers as well at the company. So I don't have a process engineer, but if anybody's who's graduated soon looking for a job, I am recruiting. So like Hannah said, I'll get calls, all night. I really don't sleep that much. I don't know if that's a good thing to say or not. So, like I said, I'll work about 50, 60 hours a week. If we run 24 hours a day. So if they have a breakdown at 1 o'clock in the morning, I'm getting calls. Sometimes you do have to get up and go in. Weekends as well. So like right now, this week I am on call. We do have an on-call rotating schedule. Every 3 weeks, I'm on call for the whole week. So if something goes wrong, like right now, they'll call me. Most likely I'm going in. But on the plus side, I do think P&G does compensate very well. So, you do kind of get, you kind of get a balance for what you're kind of getting paid for. So that's pretty much for the cultural wise. I live in Albany, Georgia. Probably never heard of it. I never heard of it until they called me for the interview. So it is a very small town. Thanks for Ivan said. Most manufacturing facilities are in very small rural areas. The plus side is that other young managers, we do hang out outside of work whenever we do have time. So for the culture, inside of work, you kind of have your young managers click, and then when you outside of work, it's pretty much kind of hanging out as well. So that's pretty much how it is, like inside and outside of work.
Yeah, sounds like a fun experience.
Like I said, I'm looking for a process engineer. So if anybody's graduating soon, let me know. I'm recruiting.
But all right. Thank you. Yeah. So Charlie, well, you kind of disappeared on us there with the little Houdini act. So I'm gonna have you. I think you're muted. Um, but I'll have you go next, and you can tell us a little bit about the project you worked on this week, along with the company culture at DuPont. I don't hear you, Charlie.
Can you hear me now?
Yes,
Yes.
sir.
All right. Sorry. All kinds of technical difficulties. I think we're good now. So my normal week. This isn't quite a normal week for me. We're actually starting up the line this week. This year's been kind of weird, I guess, like for most people. We've had a little bit more lack of demand outage time, where maybe every couple months for about a week or two, we'll shut the line down and we just don't have orders to fill. So we'll be down doing maintenance and then we'll come back up. So this week we're coming back up from an outage. So this week I've mostly been working a lot with maintenance, working a lot with the scheduling planner folks that kind of fill the orders on our plan for what we need to make. Been in a lot of coordinating, trying to move things around. So my job is to look after my line. So look out for what's best for my line. So if they ask us to make a certain order of orders for the customers, and I'm saying we can't really make this transition to this transition because the polymers maybe don't flow as well transitioning from one to the other, or maybe we want to pull this up first, I kind of help manage that. So this week's been a lot of just making sure we're ready to start the lineup. A lot of tying up loose ends and maintenance. And actually tomorrow morning is when we're starting the lineup. So I'm staying a little later today to make sure we got to like blow up all the polymer to the hoppers and start heating the lineup. That takes about 12 hours. So it's a lot of just looking after the whole process, making sure all the temperatures are coming up like normal. Normal day would be I'd come in the morning. First thing I do is mostly just look at how the night shift went. We're also 24 hours, so I'll just look at how the night shift went in terms of production, quality, make sure if we failed any film, why we failed it, and get ready for the morning meeting, which is around 8 o'clock, and report on how our line's been doing. If there's any pressing needs, I'll be chasing those down early in the morning, maintenance-wise or process-wise. But other than that, a lot of short-term, long-term kind of project stuff during the day, process improvement stuff, any trials that are coming up, getting ready for those. It's a lot of working with the operators, getting their feedback on how the line's been running over the night, that kind of stuff. Yeah. In terms of culture, though, I mean, DuPont's always been big on safety. So safety is always the biggest thing for us. We're always doing different initiatives with safety. Yeah, we start all of our meetings by asking if anyone has any safety contacts, meaning like anything to share in terms of safety on the plant. That's the biggest thing for us.
Yeah, thanks. Kendall, tell us a little bit about what it's like to be down there at Sabra.
So yeah, Sabra is pretty turbulent. Like I said, we are a newer company in the manufacturing game. So, people who are working at like the Dows and the DuPonts and the P&Gs, I'm sure you guys can all attest to the fact that you guys have a lot of systems in place, a lot of structured systems in place where there's like, you do this from A to go to B, talk to this person, escalation protocols, things like that. Sabra, I'm not going to say it's fly by night, but we're kind of learning as we're growing, right? Because we grew pretty exponentially. And, Charlie, we actually have a few people who actually transitioned from DuPont. Seth C, he's actually an engineer in my group, packing engineer, and he worked at DuPont. Matt Clark, our maintenance manager, came from DuPont. So, you kind of see that churn within the local manufacturing plants. But yeah, so in terms of like my expectations, so we're 24/7 as well. And I've actually experienced Sabra in 2 different lights. So I started Sabra actually as a production supervisor. So similar to some of the other guys on the call, like I was responsible for operation metrics, like people safety, operator training, discipline, all those good things, and just getting the product out the door. So like Shannon was saying, like getting the paper out the door, like getting the hummus out the door, like how many pounds can we do in a single night? And I was night shift. So trust me, I understand what it's like to work 12-hour night shifts and, do 3 weekends, 3 days on a weekend, 3 days off, like the whole gambit. So when I did transition over to engineering, I was pretty excited because I was getting a little bit, kind of getting a taste of the 9-to-5 work life. I have my reservations about both, but the great thing is the 9-to-5 work life does afford for some more routine in your personal life from a work-life balance compared to like a night shift or shift work, or like, like Shannon said, she's typically on call like all the time. And I was like that, definitely more so in operations, but when I got to engineering, that settled some. But, when COVID being a factor, there was a time when all of us project managers were working at home 100%. And I know for our operations folks on call, like, that wasn't really an option, because like the product hasn't run. If your company was open, frontline was there, and like your production engineers, your maintenance managers, like everyone's supply chain was there. So that was a nice little relief. But anytime we still had projects on site that needed support from engineering, I was expected to be on site for that. And in June, we actually started up our first like completely organic, like pasteurized line. So anyone who's in like, like food production, like milk and things, they all go through pasteurization processes. Is when you heat it up to a certain kill step, and then it kills all the bacteria and things like that. So in all of June, we were not only the engineers on the job, but we also ran the line as operators, more or less. So we were pretty much doing 2 roles. But those are one of those things where like the expectation is you kind of buck up and step up to the call of duty. And if you have to put in the extra hours and make sure the project is executed or whatever happens, like you do that, but we still get a level of discretion that offsets that, right? So I'm just expected at the end of the week to work, make sure what needs to get done gets done. It doesn't necessarily mean it has to be 30 hours, 40 hours, 50 hours, but just making sure that I get done and things aren't falling off the wayside. And as far as like the culture of Sabra, I would say that Sabra is a lot more like, it seems a little bit more forward than most manufacturing facilities that you would see. And I think the natural reason of that is just because like a lot of the manufacturing companies in the area are all like here, they've been here for like 50, 60, 70 plus years. And, they've been doing these processes for such a long time. Sabra kind of developing within like the last 15 years or so, we've been able to develop this very like, modern kind of culture and mindset, which is like very nice. I think it's a blessing and a curse. Like we lack some of that structure, but we have that push for innovation, which is really nice. And when you're in food, the food industry is very like the automotive industry. It's very customer driven. So if the customer is like, hey, we want a chicken barbecue chocolate hummus, like our responsibility is to try to figure out if that's even feasible. And that's a mixture between innovation, operations, and engineering. Innovation thinks about the feasibility of the product. Me as engineering, I figure if we can run it or not on equipment, and then operations is responsible for executing that. So all in all, yeah, it's, I've seen both work schedules, the 12-hour shifts, the 9-hour like data 9-to-5, but it's definitely something that you have to get used to. But one thing I can say, I agree with you, Hannah, like the fact that you've been able to travel within your role, I think that's really a great thing, especially because you're early in your career. Like most engineers that are early in their career are not typically able to travel outside of like their current work site. So any company that has like multiple regional locations or domestic locations or international is definitely like a great company to be at. But, I just want to say that, me, I started in operations. So it was like, oh, this is like a lot of shift work and stuff. And I was engineering. I was like, I want to be an engineer. But I think the important thing is like, whatever role you're in, just like learn the skills that you're trying to learn, like figure out like what are the projects and goals and tasks you're trying to hang your hat on, and then do the best way you can in that role. And then once the opportunity presents itself, that may be like what you want to do, or maybe something different. And I think that's something I learned going through operations and now to engineering.
Yeah, thanks, Kendall.
Yeah.
we actually got a Q&A question here, and it asks, how was the transition from college to an actual job? Specifically, how can you compare the work done during your past college classes to the work done at your job? And I'd like to go ahead and get this question to Ivan, so we can make it a two-part question. If you could answer that and a little bit about the culture at Dow.
Yeah, sure. So the transition from college to actual job was it's different in my opinion. In undergrad, there's like a set is it can be set. It depends on how organized you are. You have you go to class, you have your homework, you study for your quizzes, then those quizzes you have your tests, and repeat, and then you have your projects here and there, and then you have final exams, right? And then you repeat the next semester with a whole bunch of different classes. And but going into like the workforce, there's a more of a set schedule. Well, like piggybacking off of everyone, depending on how the unit is running for the most part, the hours can fluctuate. But for the most part, I should be working, set hours from 7 to 4:30 every day. And if the unit's running fine, then those are my hours. But if there's some kind of issue that comes up, I'm expected to stay until the issue's resolved, whatever the unplanned event was. And the turnaround that happened happened at the beginning of October for my unit, I was expected to work shifts. So I was coming in at 5 and then leaving at 5, 6 every day, or until whatever contractors were on the unit were done working, right? But besides those kind of things, unplanned events and like turnarounds and planned turnarounds, I'm only working from 7 to 4:30, and then I'm working on like my projects. Initially, you have to learn everything you need to learn to start performing in your role and do what you got to do for day-to-day tasks and any kind of projects. But it seems a lot more structured, and there's more of a routine when it comes to going into a full-time job into the workforce. The thing about engineering, though, is that like I mentioned, unplanned events. You might see some things might happen in your units or in whatever you're producing that were not planned. So there's a new problem that you have to solve and communicate with people to try to solve it as quick as possible. And and as safe, like never disregard safety. Like safety is always a top priority, but trying to resolve the issue and then get back up and running as soon as you can. And once that's done, you're back to your normal, well, I'll say 9 to 5, and that's like, and undergrad did prepare me for that in terms of like, helping me learn and how to think like an engineer, so I can use those critical problem solving skills that I have to use every day for those kind of unplanned events and all that. And also help me get really organized, because when it came to my TRVs coming up soon, so organizing all my notes, all my thoughts, all the plethora of information I've gotten from all the different people I've talked to about all my units, that undergrad really helped me out with organizing and getting prepared for this, basically big exam I'm going to have soon. And so there's some theory that is applied with my past college work. Like there's a little bit of thermo, there's a little bit of transport. Those are 2 classes that I had to take as a chemie in undergrad. And it's helpful to know those kinds of things, but those kinds of formulas and theories, but it's different where now you're actually applying this knowledge. If you're a process engineer, for the most part, at least for Dow, you're literally doing all the theory and calculations to design valves, design pumps, to use the correct pipe specs and make all those calculations you need. But as a production engineer, what I'm doing more is understanding the issue and have a high level understanding of what kind of calculations need to be done, so we can get process engineers and automation engineers to help us execute what we need.
Hey, yeah, thank you, Ivan. Yeah, Charlie, if you could tell us a little bit more about the application of your curriculum.
Yeah, I mean, just in general, real quick, I was just thinking the same kind of thing. We were talking about design engineer versus production engineer. And as a design engineer, you use a lot more of the maybe the math and the science, the hard science, the equations and stuff. But I haven't had to do like a differential equation or anything like that in the whole time I've been out of college. There's a lot of stuff that you learn specifically in specific classes that you don't really apply, because you don't really necessarily know what kind of role you're going to go into in your career. And really, someone told me at one point, really, and it applies to college in general, I guess, you're really just learning how to learn. So when you get to whatever company, whatever job, whatever career you're going into, you kind of have that skill set of the engineering principles in your head, kind of as a foundation, and then you kind of just use that in the background to help you problem solve and learn what in manufacturing, at least, what the process, whatever that specific manufacturing process is, and kind of learn that process. And yeah.
Thanks. Yeah, Hannah, if you want to tell us a little bit more about what it's like to apply your classes if you're applying them, directly.
Oh, I'm definitely not using what I thought I would use. I wasn't expecting this, so my role is completely different than I ever imagined. But I really enjoy it because, well, to me, I'm still continuing my education. I'm learning something completely new, so it's very different than school. Like Ivan said, there's no tests, there's no quizzes. You just, if you don't know something, you can Google it really fast, which is helpful. But everyone's like, yes, Google. But I still do use, like Charlie said, learning from my learning. How to learn. Working in projects, though, is probably the biggest thing I've taken from school. Working with other people in the real world, you don't just sit in the library, and cram for a test. You're out there, you're conversating with everyone, getting different opinions, and just problem solving in general.
So yeah, I know you and Charlie and Ivan were talking about some of the problem solving techniques that you all have had to utilize in your role. I guess the question I'd like to open up to everyone, and we'll start with Shannon, is how did you get into the position you're in, into that particular role, and where do you see yourself in the future?
Yeah. So one thing I also want to touch on to the previous question is I think what's different in my role compared to what everyone else. I started off as a process engineer, so you have the technical role, but what I'm doing now is more people-based. So that's where you bring your soft skills out. So I think it's also important to not only learn in engineering school while you're at BCU, to learn your technical capability, like you said, differential equations. Yes, that's helping you problem solve with your complex thinking, but also people skills. Like I said, I have about 35 people who directly report to me. And I think the most complex is not the engineering part, it's the people problems. And so, if someone comes in and they are just having a bad day and they're getting upset, that's where the most complex comes in, especially in my role right now, because right now I'm a senior manager for papermaking operations. So that's how I got into that role. So before I got into manufacturing, I was working for a company, natural gas company in Washington, D.C. called Washington Gas, where I designed natural gas piping systems. So I was a production engineer there. That's where I used the technical skills, like I said, design piping systems, size and valve, size and pipe size. Did that for 4 years, wanted to change. I love manufacturing because I love the fast pace of the day-to-day operations. So I started off as a process engineer at P&G, and then I went to a machine leader role, and then I got promoted and became a senior manager where I pretty much deal with the people skills. Where I see myself in the future is to continue to grow with the company. I will say this, I don't know if my aspirations are that high, but the current CEO of P&G started off as a process engineer in the same plant I started off. So he went from PE to CEO in about 35 years. So and P&G is a promote within company. So everyone who currently is in the C-suite, like a chief officer, everyone who's president, vice president, they started off as process engineers, very, straight out of college, and they worked their way about, up the corporate ladder. So that's what I see myself. I don't know exactly where I want to go because P&G is a very big company. So like I design, I don't design anymore. I manage Bounty paper towels. At our site, we do Bounty paper towels and Charmin tissue. So like, especially during the coronavirus, the way people were buying paper products off the shelves was crazy. So that business will always be there, but P&G is very large. We do everything from Tide, Gain, Crest, Pampers, Mr. Clean. So it's a very large company. So it's endless possibilities of wherever you want to go. International opportunities are always there as well. I haven't really decided yet what I want to be when I grow up, but just taking it day by day, honestly.
That's fantastic. So I wanted to ask, Kendall, I know you said you worked on a few projects with, HVAC, and you've also had experience with overseeing projects that have included cranes. I don't know how your heart hasn't dropped already, but, are there any particular licenses or certifications that you've needed to obtain since you've gotten into the role that you're in?
So it's interesting because as a project manager, obviously I'm the resource that's mainly managing and providing oversight to the trades and the execution of the trades, not so much, of course, doing the work itself. So within the confines of that responsibility and duty, it's not required for me to have any type of special certifications outside of the technical understanding of what the trades are doing, right? So if I have a electrical vendor that says, hey, I have this piece of equipment and I need 480 power 3-phase to go to that equipment. Well, if I have an electrical contractor that comes in and says, yeah, I can run you a 120 volt single phase, like it'll be great. I have to have the level of technical discernment to, one, understand the difference between power voltages and phases, and two, be able to hold that vendor accountable to make sure they have technical accuracy, right? And I think that that's where a lot of the technical, and theoretical work that we did in college, that I did at VCU, kind of comes into play, where I have to have that level of discernment, even though the nature of my role is more so a people and process manager role, right? So yeah, I wouldn't say in terms of HVAC, I'm not HVAC certified. I'm not certified on electrical control panels, things of that nature. The key to being a good project manager is to have a baseline understanding and know who and where to get the answer and resources to, and how to make those things come together pretty beautifully to keep budget and schedule.
Yeah, it sounds fantastic. I want to transition into asking Ivan a little bit more about the question that was asked, and one of the most difficult projects that you've probably had to tackle your first year, or within your first few years of graduation at Dow, and if there are any other certifications or licenses you've had to pick up in your position.
In this current role, I haven't been in it too long. I've only been here for 4 months. So like the biggest challenges I'm facing right now is learning everything. The learning curve is exponential. So I just keep learning something new, or like 20,000 things every day. And I'm trying to retain it all and write it all down, and then learn the people, like Kendall mentioned, like learn the people to go to with all these, if there's an issue in the unit, understanding what caused the issue, and then finding the right people to talk to address the issue, and then make it fall together beautifully so we can get the problem resolved and back up and running, right? So the biggest challenge I'm having right now is just keeping up with everything, and staying organized so I can learn everyone I need to know and learn everything I need to know about the process in the unit. But other than that, like the biggest projects I've worked on is like what I told you, like a vent valve, and then having to change a whole bunch of procedures and trying to understand how these procedures work. And then when I was in turnaround, doing a few quick calculations, like calculating like one of our columns has this weird serpentine shape that we had to try to finagle out with the crane, because it's like around 100 feet high above a second level deck, and that piping was around 5,500 pounds. So we had to come up with that calculation so that way we can get the right size cranes out there so they can come out, and you're like hoping that, of course, everyone's going to double check your calculations, but you got to make sure everyone's calculations is correct, because then you have a 5,500 pound pipe that's 100 feet in the air that could drop. So you got to make sure that kind of stuff is done correctly, right? And in terms of certifications, I haven't had to get really anything certified. Like one of the things I need to get now is a TWIC card to go over to certain units, because I have to deal with a little bit of wastewater. So going to a Twit cart to go to like a Westfield, which is like a huge tank field where we keep some of our raw materials and products. And some certifications I need to do like internally are like one thing that's called an RCI, which is a root cause investigation. So earlier I mentioned like unplanned events. So it could be anything that we weren't planning on happening and we need, to resolve. So once everything is resolved, on the fly, then we need to enter it, we need to document it, what happened, and everybody needs to, and then everyone's aware of what happened. And the root cause investigation, if it's needed, what we'll do is go out and look at every single possible scenario, every single possible reason as to why that one issue or that one problem happened, and then we go and then we kind of narrow down everything and then go to the best reason as to why we think it happened. And that's a formal RCI, a formal root cause investigation. And then we have to go through the classes for training for that, because you need to be trained on how to think and ask those kind of right questions to see exactly where it started and how it ended and what is the main reason you think that one issue happened. And that's just one example of like one of the internal certifications that we need. And as a production engineer, that's extremely critical. And that's an in-class, that's kind of like an in-person class that we need. So I haven't had to get it yet because, coronavirus and social distancing and everything. But as soon as it's okay, we're going into phase one with our work. But as soon as they get the training back up, that's one of the first things my leader wants me to do. He said, we need to get you trained in RCI like right now, because if anything happens, it's my job to investigate if it's needed.
Yeah, thank you. I know we have a little bit under 10 minutes left here on the clock, so I wanted to go ahead and ask to everyone, and we'll start with Hannah. What advice would you offer to a student or a recent grad that's trying to enter, the manufacturing industry and even your particular role or type of role in the coming future?
Yeah, I would say really be open to everything. Apply to every single job. I mean, you're coming out of college. If you know exactly what you want to do, good for you. I didn't personally. I applied all across the board, ended up on manufacturing. Didn't expect it that much or expect to go into manufacturing, but I really enjoy my position. I enjoy working with all the people in manufacturing. It's really great just to have an open mind. And really, if you do get the position, so this is kind of going back to the other question, but just really learn about the company and what you're actually going to be doing. It's really important to understand the entire, I'm talking as a process engineer, to understand the process. You need to know, from beginning to end and all the people who are involved in the process. So, from the operators to the plant manager, just get to know everyone, talk to everyone. There's a lot to learn, but it's great. And also good luck to everyone.
Thank you. Yeah, Charlie, if you could give us some advice for new students and recent grads or, grads about to May 2021. Yeah. It's been all day.
Yeah, I would just say, I feel like from what I've seen over the years is the difference between, I guess, younger or graduates that come in to like a manufacturing plant type situation that succeed versus maybe struggle a little bit more isn't necessarily how much they know or how smart they are or anything like that. It's really how much they put the time in, and you can tell that they care. Not that they're wanting you to stay, 12 hours every day when really you're working like an 8-hour day and you just have to kill yourself to be around all the time, but really just, and not that you have to talk to everyone. Communication's a big thing. So I'm more of a what did they say? I keep to myself more. I'm a little bit more, I'm not an extrovert, I'm more of an introvert. So I struggled with that a little early on. That's understandable, but really just try and put yourself out there, communicate with as many people as possible, and really just show that you care about the work that you're doing. Even if you don't feel like you know the process, you're not going to know the process without right off the bat. You're not even going to know it within the first month. Really, it's going to take probably months before you really have any kind of a grasp on the process. So really, just put yourself out there, show people that you care, that you want to learn, and yeah, that's probably my biggest advice.
Thank you. yeah, Kendall, if you could please add your humble wisdom.
Yeah, I mean, one thing that's really critical to remember about manufacturing is that manufacturing does not exist without people, right? Like you need people and bodies to operate the equipment. So if you're coming in any type of leadership that's not frontline, so you're a process engineer, production engineer, engineering capital manager, facilities, whatever the case may be, you have to realize that like the knowledge center, the true knowledge center are all in the operators, right? And my advice to most people coming into manufacturing space, like Ivan said, like he's still learning. Like most of us are still learning. You're not going to know everything. Like you're not going to know everything about heat exchangers and boiler systems and these complex like paper creation machines because we didn't learn all of that in detail in college outside of theoretical, right? So it's like there's people here who do know that, and they will be your biggest resource, the people, if you take the time to understand and learn not only what they like about their job, but what they don't like about the job. Because what they don't like about their job translates to opportunities, and those are things that you can capitalize off of and drive improvement, process improvement, whatever the case may be, but also building trust with the people. So even if you're in an extremely technical role and you're in maintenance and you are a peer function to operations, take the time to meet the operators because that way they'll disclose more to you, making you, allowing your root cause analysis to be a lot better, allowing you to just partner with them a lot better, and it gives you better marks. The second thing I would say is like, I agree with Hannah, be open. Like a lot of people coming out of engineering school in general are very dead set on like, I want to be an engineer, whether that's a design engineer, HVAC engineer. I'm pretty sure we were all there once. And then some of us went straight into engineering roles and some of us went into people management roles. And you would never think that like going out of an engineering school and doing 4 or 5 years of hard science, hard technical STEM math, that you will end up having to manage people and ask them why they're late all the time. But I know Shannon can,
Yeah.
So, but here's the thing. The goal is just do the best at what you're doing in that moment in time. Because if I hadn't tried my best as an operations TL, I wouldn't have been chosen and selected to transition into engineering, where I'm now able to be the engineer that I more or less thought I could or would be, coming out of college. And then, I think the last thing that I would say is just keep being open and willing to learn. I think that's a huge one because manufacturing and supply chain is, the unique part about it is that it's very dynamic every single day. As you guys know, like everyone says, some weeks it's a 8-hour day week, and some weeks it's a 12, 14-hour day weeks because most functions in supply chain are reactive to the plant and they're reactive to the nature of the work. So you have to be open, you have to be willing, you have to be diligent, to be adaptive, be reactive, but also celebrate yourself, right? One advice I really have to a lot of people, and even on this call, is like, it's okay to brag about yourself, right? So if you had this machine that went down for like, 2-3 hours of downtime and there was all these escalation protocols and you were the engineer who figured it out, like put that on an email, make sure your higher ups understand that and you manage up and manage down so that people know that you're doing a good job. And then people can say, okay, like this person, they're collaborative, they do this, they're technically sharp, whatever that thing is, but make sure you celebrate yourself and that will propel you towards your transition into the next stages of your career. Did I answer everything?
And some.
Oh.
Thank you, though. Yeah, Ivan.
Yeah, no, I think Charlie and Kendall and Hannah really hit the nail on this one. I have the same exact advice for the most part. But the one thing I would say, one thing I would say when you're first going into the role, it's going to be a huge learning curve, especially in manufacturing. Like, you're not going to know the process in a month. You're not going to know it in 2. You're probably not going to know it in 4. You're going to keep learning no matter what. But my piece of advice would be, don't beat yourself up over it. You may want to contribute as soon as you start, as soon as you get there. You think you know enough, but then you're still learning. Don't beat yourself up over it. Everyone knows that you're new, and everyone knows that you're there to learn. And if you continue to show the initiative or put in the initiative to keep learning and asking questions and stay next to the operators, like Kendall had a great point. Operators are one of your best resources, especially in manufacturing. They're the ones that physically run the plant. They know all the ins and outs of it. So you show the operators the initiative, you ask them good questions, or just questions in general, showing them that you want to stay engaged, that you want to be there, that you want to work and contribute however you can, everyone's going to want to help you, and they're going to want to help you succeed and, you know, get those, help you start learning how to figure out like those problem solving skills that you can put in an email and, you know, send to higher up so everyone knows you're doing a good job. And that's my biggest piece of advice. Don't beat yourself up over you know, not catching things on quickly, because it's processes can be really complex, and it takes, I was told before I came into my role, when I was asking questions, like, when do you think, I was asking operators and my TAs and my leaders, I was asking like, how long do you think it'll be before I can actually contribute back and be, you know, helpful for the most part. And they told me like, most likely probably not for a whole year. Like, you'll be doing little things here and there, you know, doing some like, you know, some paperwork, you'll be out there helping with some maintenance or whatnot, but doing like actual big projects, probably not to, for maybe not even a full year just yet, like maybe even a little more, because you need to know, you really need to get trained and really understand that information. So it takes time. And like I said, just don't beat yourself up over it. Just keep taking the initiative and keep asking questions, and people will help you succeed.
Yeah, that's what everybody said, such great stuff. I think I like what Hannah said, is research the company before, because in manufacturing, you have, like Kendall said, it's different areas. So you have your operations, you have your engineering, you also have research and development. So it also kind of depends on where you want to go. If you want to go more technical, you know, we want research and development, you want engineering, you know, express that path. I've been in operations, which is more of the people aspect. So I can say, learn soft skills. You have engineers that graduate, say that I want to be engineer, they want to be technical, they get into a people management role, and then they don't succeed because they have strictly just, you know, hard technical skills. I think that's pretty much the biggest thing. Other than that, I think everyone had pretty much hit it on the nail. One thing I do want to talk about is operators. Yeah, so when you're in operations and you're dealing with people, the goal is to not know everything. That's not it. The goal is to know who knows what. So if you have those soft skills, you're meeting up with people, having join ups, and you do get a problem, a sudden breakdown, the goal is, who do you go to? And if you have that good relationship with them, then they're willing to look out for you. And not only will they teach you, but they also be able to help you. Other than that, I think one thing I want to say is my favorite part about manufacturing, especially at P&G, is I haven't bought Bounty paper towels or Charmin tissue since I got hired. So one of my, all the product with it as well. I haven't bought toothpaste, haven't bought laundry detergent. One of my spare bedrooms looks like a mini warehouse. So I'm not sure if other manufacturing companies do that, but P&G does.
All right, so I'm gonna go to you, Ken. I'm gonna go to Kendall whenever I need some hummus, and I'm gonna go to you when I need everything else.
Got you. I got you. That's all I had.
And if I need some film, I'm gonna go to Charlie.
Oh, if you need
I'll give you some drive shafts. I have drive shafts if your car breaks.
Gotcha.
Mostly Ford. It's light, it's aluminum.
All right, well, thank you so much, everyone. I'm gonna hand it off to Miss Limza here.
Okay, so thank you, Sean, and thank you, panelists, Shannon, Ivan, Hannah, Kendall, Charlie. Y'all were wonderful. It was such great knowledge that you shared and your wisdom. Thank you. We're going to be sharing this with lots of students. I know they're going to appreciate it. And Shannon, we're going to share that news that you're recruiting. So
yeah, I definitely am. You know, just email me if you want. If anybody needs to email Laura, email me. You have my contact information. I do recruiting for Procter & Gamble, and you know, I have access to bringing new talent in. So I'm looking for process engineers. If anybody's graduated soon, let me know.
I have a plug. Sabra also, we're going through a reorg right now with our engineering department, where some of our engineering resources are going over to operations. So we're looking for more plant engineers, you know, and things of that nature, production engineers. So if you go on Indeed, we have all our stuff posted up there. So there's definitely some more opportunities happening in Sabra in the next few months.
Oh, also, we're looking for a process engineer. So you can just email, if you put my email in, you can email me.
We will share your contact info. And would it be smart for us to ask students to connect with you on LinkedIn? Would that work for all of you?
Yeah, for sure.
All right, that was awesome. Thank you so much, everybody. Hope you all have a wonderful night, and thanks for being here with us.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Have a good night.
Yeah.
Bye,
Night.
guys.